What's up YouTube? This is Danny Draghi with my complete Taoist guide for MIR4. We're going to kick things off with the class overview that will be great for anyone who may want to play a Taoist or beginners that want to make sure they're playing the class to its full potential. Then I'll go over the basic attack combos and cover how their abilities work together and how they will improve with each level of awakening. Next, I'll go over potential builds for the Taoist, and any extra tips that I can think of will be crammed into the most appropriate section. I want to apologize up front about the lack of jokes in this guide, as I put a ton of effort into it and I wanted to take it super serial. But first, a reverse ad from the anti-sponsor of today's video, K-Health. Normally, when a company sponsors a YouTuber, they'll pay them a previously agreed upon fee so that YouTuber will say positive things about their product in a video. However, in a reverse ad, I pay a company money for a previously agreed upon service, but they screw it up, so I make a video talking shit about them. Are you still going to the doctor for prescriptions, such as antibiotics and birth control? That is so 2019. You need to get with the times and start getting your prescriptions from real doctors or nurse practitioners online with your phone or PC without the expensive copays and long lines of the doctor, ER, or urgent care visit. Psst, that's where all the sick people are. Just make sure you use any other site than K-Health, where they put the K in not health. The K is silent. Literally any other site would be better than this piece of shit. I get the search result from my PC where I read satisfaction guaranteed and board licensed doctors for only $23 per visit. Sounded like a good deal, but first I have to register. So I answer 20 questions, and then I'm told I'll be required to download the app. Okay, but I have a computer right here. Anyway, I install the app, and I'm directed to a chat room where I converse with an AI chatbot for 20 minutes, using pre-generated responses and emojis in order to figure out my symptoms as if I'm some sort of trained gorilla. I'd already made an appointment with my dentist, but I wanted to get a head start on fighting the infection with antibiotics to alleviate the pain and swelling. Then the bot says, "Let's see if you qualify. What state are you in?" 30 minutes into this shit, and you're just now asking me what state I'm in? Please, put an F in the comments for my Alaskan and Hawaiian brothers that died from a treatable medical condition while waiting for this stupid chatbot to check their eligibility. Now I have to take a picture of the swelling on my face and my ID so the clinician, which is a fancy word for probably not a doctor, shall join the chat any moment. A few hours later, I get a notification that the wizard will see me, and after typing out everything I told the chatbot, but using words this time, this doctor-esque individual asked me to take a picture of the infection. I took another picture of my face that was so swollen at this time it was forcing one of my eyes closed, and they said, no, a picture inside your mouth. I need to see the infection. I attempted to pull my swollen cheek from my skull while shoving my phone into my mouth for an infection selfie, and they complained that they were unable to detect an infection and that I should seek medical help in person. I tried to explain that I was also a level 70 healer myself, but she didn't care, so I asked for a refund, and they gave me a support email address. I did end up getting a refund for my $23, but this was a waste of 3 hours of my time when I was in pain, and we all know that is the longest kind of time. I went with Dr. Alexa, and my pharmacy had my prescription filled 45 minutes later. Don't waste your time with K-Health. especially while in pain because they suck. I'm sure if I came here to get treatment for ED, I bet this Wachter wouldn't need a photographic evidence of my white, flaccid, hairy, underachieving dick. And now, our featured presentation. Just to warn you, much of this information is based upon my observations and my opinions and my experiences of the game, which may radically differ from your own. I spent about 60 hours creating this guide to help players, and if you believe I am mistaken about anything at all, feel free to start a dialogue in the comments. The in-game tools are very limited for testing, and the game is riddled with translation errors, bots, bugs, etc. So if you notice a mistake, please take the time to point it out and help your fellow Taoist. The Taoist is the healer class of the game, tasked with keeping allies alive through the toughest situations the game will throw at you. They excel in sustained fights, such as large PvP encounters, group farming, raids, and boss battles. They struggle in one-on-one PvP due to their inability to lock enemies down, as well as solo experience farming due to having the lowest raw damage output. I'm not saying that you can't win as a Taoist in 1v1, but only if you play well and the opponent refuses to run away or teleport. You don't really beat the opponent so much as grind them down to nothing while out-healing and kiting their damage over time. This is largely in part to 5 of their abilities being balanced around playing in a group, and having only 10 damaging abilities while other classes have 12 or 13. The Taoist also has the weakest ultimate ability when considering damage, and their damage is split between both physical and spell attack type. A Taoist should be the wealthiest of all classes when it comes to copper due to the cost of health potions compared to mana potions. For the cost of 1 mana potion, a Taoist can heal the entire party more than 1,000 copper worth of large healing potions. Since a healer is so important for group content, you may be able to join stronger allies in tough areas sooner than any other classes. This is a great class if you find yourself playing a supportive role in games. Their ability to sustain high amounts of damage also make them great at soloing bosses, removing PK penalty, and completing high-level content without having to rest and wait for the health potion cooldown. The main things that set an average Taoist apart from a superstar is positioning and mana management. It feels bad when you're overextended and you get killed, or when you watch your friends die because they were out of range of your heals or you were out of mana. A novice Taoist is probably the most useless character in the game and doesn't start to come online until level 56 when they unlock their 3rd healing ability and begin to awaken them. The main debilitation of the Taoist is Quell, which will lower the spell attack of enemies by 25 points. She can also cause darkness, but no class can take advantage of darkness until they awaken their abilities and begin to gain bonus damage, inflict silence, or blind depending on darkness stacks. She is able to knock down enemies as her main form of crowd control. Later in the game, she'll be able to strip buffs, remove debilitations and CC from her party, chill, confuse, res allies, stun, silence, and grant her entire party 3 seconds of invincibility. The dodge ability of the Taoist is backwards by default with a range of 5 blocks, but it can be triggered in any direction by holding down the directional key while dodging. In summary, I've gathered these pros and cons to help you decide if this is the class for you. The Taoist has 3 basic attack combinations. We will use these blocks on the floor to measure range for basic attacks and abilities, to give you a relative idea of how they work. The range for the first attack combo is between 1.5 and 6 blocks. This attack pattern uses your spell attack and deals 40% bonus damage on the third attack while knocking monsters back. It takes 2 seconds to complete this combo. The other 2 attack patterns use your physical attack attributes and are dependent on the range of your target, but it doesn't always work perfectly. If an enemy comes within 1.5 blocks of you, you will cancel your ranged attack combo and switch to a 4-hit combo that deals 40% bonus damage on the third attack and 70% on the fourth, with a chance to knock the opponent down. You could also start a 5-hit combo instead that deals 40% damage on the third attack, 50% on the fourth, and 70% on the fifth, with a chance to knock down the enemy. This makes the 4-hit combo ideal because it has higher DPS and will knock down enemies more often than the 5-hit combo, but the 5-hit combo is 43% more badass looking. Casting abilities will not interrupt this combo, but switching targets, or if your target gets too far away or too close, your combo will restart when going from ranged to melee or melee to ranged. I'm going to cover the basic abilities and their synergies for the Novice Taoist and move on to the ability enhancements with each awakening at level 5 and level 8. The third awakening doesn't really do much to add to the overall gameplay as it really just increases all of the numbers, so I won't cover them in detail. When I go over damage type, I'm not talking about the actual damage it does, as that changes with each level, but instead an approximation of how much of the damage is physical and how much is spell attack. Some abilities can be cancelled by dodging or using your ultimate ability. The ones that cannot be cancelled are ideal to use right before dodging or using your ultimate, as it will cancel the ability animation. This will cause you to be harder to hit, while allowing you to use your next ability sooner without lowering your damage. All abilities have a wind-up period. This can be seen when you activate the ability, and the ability icon shows a counterclockwise animation. Even abilities that grant you total immunity can be interrupted during this time, forcing the ability to go on cooldown. When I give an ability a range, the first number is the range your character will run to before casting, while the second number is the maximum distance it can damage enemies from. This can be helpful if you have enemies behind your current target, or if you want to cast your ability sooner by holding a directional key and activating the ability from a safe distance. Ray of Light is your ultimate ability. It is 40% physical damage and 60% spell attack damage in a narrow straight line, while healing yourself and any party members inside the damaging area of effect for 10 to 15% of their maximum health. It is easily dodged and the lowest damage output of all other ultimate abilities. For this reason, it is best used in PvP to cancel out the ultimate or powerful abilities of the enemy with its 3 seconds invincibility. It can also be used to protect yourself while teleporting away if you time it so that you teleport the moment the beam appears. The beam is able to heal a maximum of 4 party members and the caster, while it is able to damage up to 12 enemies with 9 individual attacks each. These attacks will not recharge your ultimate meter. The range is 7.5 blocks, but the final 2 attacks will strike enemies up to 8 blocks away. The healing range is slightly wider than the damaging area. Unlike other abilities, using your ultimate will cancel whatever ability you are currently using if it is able to be cancelled, just like dodging would. Also, unlike many other abilities, you will cast it wherever you are instead of walking into your target's range, so it's important to familiarize yourself with exactly how long it is. You should usually try not to save an ally with this ability unless it is a last resort, as your other healing abilities are superior. Allies will frequently dodge away from this to escape enemies. This leaves you unable to heal them for an extra 3 seconds while waiting for your ult to finish casting. The moment it's used, you can begin to recharge it again, but it can't be used for another 10 seconds. To minimize your ultimate downtime, try to hit as many opponents as possible with your basic attacks and abilities. Moonlight Wave attacks 5 times, doing 100% spell damage on up to 8 enemies caught in the circular area of effect. It is a quick ability that is hard for enemies to dodge out of and quells enemies for 8 seconds. When enemies are quelled, they lose 25 spell attack and you're able to trigger your bash abilities that require quell. The autocast range is 4 blocks, but you're able to strike enemies behind the target with a max range of 5 blocks. The ability can strike up to 40 times for an average ultimate charge gain and cannot be cancelled by your dodge or ultimate ability. Sunbeam Sword attacks 7 times, doing 100% physical damage on up to 8 enemies caught in this straight line attack. If enemies were quelled when this ability is used, you will trigger a bash which does 50% bonus damage and compares your bash damage bonus to your opponent's bash damage reduction for an additional damage amplifier. This ability is autocast at 3 blocks, but has a max range of 4.5 blocks. This ability can strike up to 56 times for high ultimate charge gain and can be completely cancelled by a dodge or ultimate ability use. The ability can also be reduced by using dodge or ultimate in the middle before it's completed. This is one of the lowest mana costing abilities with the shortest cooldown and will be used more than any other ability, so it's a good idea to level up this ability first. Sunbeam Sword is the shortest of the straight line abilities, but also the widest. Moonlight Orb attacks 9 times, doing 100% spell damage on up to 6 enemies caught in the circular area of effect. It is much slower than Moonlight Wave, so it's easier for enemies to dodge out of the extra attacks, but it also quells enemies for 8 seconds to enable your bash abilities. The range is greater than Wave, with an autocast range of 5 and a damage range of 6 blocks. This ability will also suck monsters towards the center of the area to help keep your distance and group them for follow-up abilities. This ability can strike up to 54 times for high ultimate charge gain and cannot be cancelled by your dodge or ultimate, so you're able to cancel the ability animation with it. Rain of Blades attacks 4 times, doing 60% physical damage and 40% spell damage in a circular area of effect. If enemies are confused or chilled, you'll trigger a bash bonus for 50% more damage. This ability has an autocast range of 5 blocks, but a maximum range of 6 blocks. Rain of Blades can strike up to 8 enemies for 32 total attacks and average ultimate charge gain. This ability can be cancelled with dodge or ultimate. With such a high mana cost and low cooldown, it should not be used when AFK grinding, as you have no way of triggering the extra bash damage. Heal will heal up to 4 allies in range and the caster for between 4 and 5,000 health over 5 seconds. It has a range of 17 blocks, but if you're in a party of more than 5 people, it will prioritize the closest members instead of the members with the lowest health, so you need to position yourself near the allies that need the healing the most. If left on autocast, the heal will trigger when you or a party member in range falls below 70% health. When farming experience or quests together, it is a good idea for everyone to turn their health potions to 65%, as one heal can save them all 3 to 4 potions each. It is a good idea to turn these off autocast in PvP and boss battles, as you don't want them to accidentally trigger and only heal a single ally and be on cooldown when you really need it. This ability cannot be interrupted by dodging or casting your ultimate. Once you cast the ability, you gain a few seconds of immunity from crowd control. Piercing Blades attacks 5 times, doing 100% physical damage in a straight line. If the target is quelled, confused, or chilled, you'll trigger a bash bonus. The autocast range is 3.5 blocks, but it can hit targets up to 6 blocks away. Hitting up to 8 enemies, it has an average ultimate charge gain of 40 total attacks. It's possible to cancel this ability with dodge or ultimate and nullify all or some of the damage. Piercing Blades is in the middle of the range and thickness of the 3 straight line attacks. Guardian Circle is a defensive ability doing 100% spell damage in a small radius around the caster to up to 5 enemies. It also grants the user and up to 4 allies within 9 blocks of the caster an additional 25 to 40 physical defense and 10 to 16% bash damage reduction for 60 seconds. This ability has a very low ultimate charge gain, and it is impossible to cancel the ability with dodge or ultimate. Tai Chi attacks 6 times doing 75% physical damage and 25% spell damage in a 360-degree circle around the caster. It has a range of 4 blocks and can hit up to 8 enemies, landing 46 attacks for a high ultimate charge gain. The ability will stun lock monsters struck, and the final attack will knock monsters down and has a 10% chance to knock down players. The caster is also immune to crowd control while casting. This ability can be interrupted by dodging or ultimate, nullifying all or some of the damage. Blasting Charm attacks a single time, doing 100% spell damage in a small area of effect around the target, hitting up to 5 enemies for a low ultimate charge rate. It has a range of 6 blocks and will inflict darkness into the target for 8 seconds and lower their physical defense by 50 for 15 seconds. This ability can be interrupted by dodging or ultimate, but if you wait until the ball is in the air, it will still damage the target. Soaring Slash attacks 9 times, doing 75% physical damage and 25% spell damage in a straight line. If the enemy is confused or chilled, it will trigger a bash bonus. It can hit up to 8 enemies for a high ultimate charge rate of attacking 72 times. The autocast range is 3 blocks, but it has a very long range of 7 blocks. Soaring Slash is the longest and skinniest of the 3-line attacks. Expulsion Circle is a defensive ability that increases the caster and up to 4 allies in range an additional 25 to 40 spell defense for 60 seconds. The range is 9 blocks, and this ability gives no ultimate charge. Greater Heal heals the caster and up to 4 allies in range about 15% of their maximum health. It will trigger at about 65% health if left on autocast and has a range of 17 blocks. Now before we get into awakened abilities, I want to talk about synergies and playstyles. Once we lay down the framework, we'll go over how things will change with each awakening. The Sorcerer has 3 abilities that can chill enemies, enabling your extra bash abilities, and they also have 3 abilities that can take advantage of quelled enemies. The Taoist has 2 abilities that can quell, and 2 abilities that can take advantage of that quell. The Warrior has 2 abilities that confuse, and 1 ability that uses quell. The Lancer has 2 abilities that chill, and 1 ability that uses quell. The Arbalist has 1 ability that can chill. My favorite duo is the Warrior and Taoist, as the Warrior is great at pulling large groups of enemies for her to get maximum value from her offensive abilities and mitigating most of the damage with knockdowns. The Sorcerer is my next favorite pick due to the extra bash combos made, followed by a second Taoist for the same reason. It is important to farm efficiently, using as few health potions as possible. I'll usually have a setup where I have both heals, both Moonlight abilities, Sunbeam Sword, and Piercing Blades on autocast for AFK Grinding. I set my health potion to 65% and mana to 50% and ability usage to sometimes. Having a low health potion setting will allow my healing spells to do all of the heavy lifting and save me a ton of copper. Having a low mana threshold will allow the mana gained each tick to work as an additional potion and reduce the potion usage by as much as 50%. If you use all of your abilities on autocast, you will drain your mana pool and eventually die because your damaging abilities cost less mana than your healing abilities. Instead of waiting until a heal is available, you will continue casting damaging abilities until you die, or at least use an absurd amount of health potions, draining all of the copper you earned from farming. The key to 1v1 is knowing what the class you are up against is trying to do. As abilities are awakened, each class will become much better at what they were made to do, and this greatly increases the skill cap, separating the okay players from the greats. There is not enough time to react to what you see the other player doing, so you must anticipate the best move for them to make and be ready to counter it. It is a good idea to participate in at least 2 duels every day, as this will reward your clan with experience and resources, and you'll receive 500 clan coins in practice. It's important to know when you can dodge during your combos, and when you need to wait for the ability to finish to maximize your damage output. You have less abilities that do damage than your opponents, so you have to make each one of them count. The warrior wants to get in your face and knock you down. They have great mobility and are the best class at chasing a fleeing target. Their ultimate can easily be dodged, so it is best to save your ultimate for when both of your heals are on cooldown and you are debilitated. Even if you cannot dodge the damage, a well-timed heal or Tai Chi will keep you on your feet. They do pure physical damage, so don't waste mana on Expulsion Circle. While they have many knockdowns at their disposal, most are only 10% against players, so they are not reliable at this stage of the game. Most of their abilities have a short range and you can just dodge or walk away from them. They will usually try to charge in and use all of their knockdowns in a row until one of them works. Start a small combo of Moonlight ability, dodge back, and trigger your 2 bash combos as early as possible, starting with Sunbeam Sword. It is important that you see the debilitation was successful before continuing your combo, or else you'll have to use your other Moonlight ability. When twin swords appear over their head, they are granted with 1.5 seconds of immunity due to Berserk and extra damage, so you should continue to kite away until you are ready for another bash combo, while using Rain of Blades and Soaring Slash from a safe distance when you have enough mana to do so. When they use their Riposte ability, try to kite them out for the next few seconds, as they have a large amount of damage reduction. This is really just a battle of attrition, and the Taoist should win every time as long as the warrior doesn't try to flee. The Lancer has a bit more range than the warrior, but the concept is the same. Their knockdowns are too weak to be reliable, and you can still easily dodge their attacks. The main difference between fighting a warrior and a Lancer is that I'll often dodge through the Lancer so that I'm behind them. This will mitigate much of their skill and bash damage that is in a straight line or a circle right in front of them. Lancers do spell and physical damage, so it's helpful to keep Expulsion Circle active while fighting them. They also gain invincibility when they use Crushing Blow and their ultimate. When they use their Absorption ability, they'll heal back a bit of damage, but they'll also chill themselves when they attack you if you are also chilled. This is a great time to use your additional bash abilities that you normally could not trigger on your own. The Sorcerer is a bit trickier early on because of the large bursts of damage that can often catch you by surprise if you're not ready to act. It is fairly easy to dodge out of their ultimate and thunderstorm abilities. Early on in battle, they'll cast a magic shield, greatly reducing incoming damage. It's best to use your non-bash abilities at this time, such as Soaring Slash, Rain of Blades, Tai Chi, and the Moonlight abilities to quickly disable it, hitting it 20 times. Once the shield is removed, they'll probably frozen block and become invincible for 3 seconds. This is when I would heal back up and go in with my bash combo now that they're defenseless. They gain another 3 seconds of invincibility when casting their ultimate. I try to save my ultimate for when they use their Immolate ability, as it roots them in place for the duration. While Guardian Circle will not help with physical defense, since a sorcerer is spell damage only, it will reduce any bash damage taken, so it might be good to cast when you notice you're chilled or burned and you're expecting them to bash you momentarily. When fighting another Taoist, the biggest factor is not canceling your damaging abilities while dodging or using your ultimate, and ensuring that your target is quelled before using your bash abilities. I usually try to save dodge for their Tai Chi, ultimate, and bash abilities once I notice I'm quelled. If you cancel 0 of your abilities and your enemy cancels 2, you'll probably end up winning. If you get both of your bashes off and your opponent doesn't, you'll definitely end up winning. I have the least experience with the Arbalest, so this will be short. She deals only physical damage, so Expulsion Circle is useless. She gains 1 second of invincibility when she uses Pain Strike Gale, and 3 seconds while using her ultimate Arrow Rain. The big abilities to dodge or immune are her ultimate, Heavenly Bow, Ice Cage, and Venom Mist. I hope it is clear that the biggest thing you can do to help you in PvP is watch your opponents and your own status effects. You need to be able to identify when you are debilitated and when your opponent is debilitated at a glance, so you know how to continue the combo or take evasive actions. This will become more and more important as abilities are awakened. You fight more skilled opponents, and treasures and stones are upgraded. Players are much more likely to immune, remove, dodge, resist, or evade your debilitations than monsters or bosses. So if you go into each battle using only muscle memory, then you're leaving each battle up to chance and not skill. It's easy to watch your abilities if you don't know their cooldowns, your ability order, or rely on the fire around the ability to perform bash combos. It is much better for a Taoist to watch their target status effects, their status effects, health, mana, and party health in tough battles, which is on the opposite side of the screen. There is much more useful information up here, all in one spot, than glancing at your abilities. I will still check my cooldowns from time to time and make sure I'm positioned properly, but most of my attention is spent on this top left corner of the screen. When in a 5-person party, it's usually wise to keep your defensive buffs active at all times. Remember not to waste mana casting them before they expire, and try to catch as many members as possible in range. It's important to keep your blasting charm up on the boss as much as possible to help your team deal more damage. Be sure not to cast any abilities without triggering a bash, and try to space out your quells so that they are causing as many bashes for your allies as possible while lowering the boss's skill damage, since quell does not stack. It is best to stay at your maximum range while fighting the bosses, as your basic attack knockdown combo will be useless against them. Remember to hold the directional button while casting your abilities so that you damage the boss from maximum range instead of running up to it. Save your Tai Chi for when the boss adds monsters so that you help everyone with the stun and knockdown. If you take on monster aggro, try to run through the boss and dodge away to safety so that the monsters are caught in the AoE of your allies. Try to position yourself so that your abilities are damaging the boss and as many other monsters as possible. It is a good idea to always keep your mana above 50% while both of your heals are available so that you can save multiple allies who are in trouble. Once your heals and ult are used, you can use more mana for buffs or damage while waiting for them to become available again. Greater heal is much better at saving allies than heal. When in a 15-person party, positioning is even more important, since your buffs and heals will only be applied to the nearest people, and not always the people who need it the most in fights. Your buffs should be used on the front line, your heals should be conserved for life-saving situations, and many times you will want to be as close as possible to make sure you're healing your target. It is better to basic attack from max range so you'll be able to easily avoid most abilities. Most bosses use a very strong ability and give you a window where you can reposition to heal or perform a small bash combo. Remember to keep Blasting Charm going on cooldown to empower your allies' attacks, even if they're not in your party. The biggest part of large-scale PvP is communication and positioning. You want to move as a unit, with your front line of Lancers and Warriors leading the pack with Taoists and Arbalists in the middle, and Sorcerers bringing up the rear. This will allow you to heal and buff the front line and protect the back line by focusing any targets that get past them. These overextended targets will not be able to be healed, so your damage will not be wasted. It is crucial to remember that keeping people alive is the primary goal, and damage, or CC, is secondary, so pay attention to your mana bar and ally health bars at all times while safely using Blasting Charm and Moonlight Orb on the party leader's targets for extra burst damage. Debilitation durations are extended from 8 seconds to 10 seconds. Your bash bonus damage goes from 50% to 65%. Ray of Light heals all party members for an additional 10% max HP and does 30% bonus damage to monsters. Moonlight Wave lowers stun resistance by 10% for 10 seconds. Passive boost of 10% bash damage and 4% monster damage. Sunbeam Sword 50% chance to lower knockdown resistance 10% for 15 seconds. You also gain the passive effect of an extra 5% mana potion recovery amount. This works on the instant 300 as well as the 5% from large pots. Moonlight Orb lowers target skill damage reduction by 10% for 15 seconds. It has a 35% chance to remove buffs from monsters and 20% chance in PvP. It gains the passive ability of 4% monster damage and increases the party's physical and spell defense by 20. Using this when you notice they have buffed themselves can cause it to rip their buffs and tip any battle in your favor. It will not work on the Sorcerer's frozen block though. Rain of Blades resets chilled and confused duration, increasing stack by 1, and sets the duration to 10 seconds. If the ability lands a crit, they'll also have their physical and spell attack lowered by 10 for 60 seconds. 30% chance to reduce enemies' evasion by 300 for 4 seconds, with a passive ability to reduce the party's skill damage by 4%. Heal recovers an additional 10% for the caster and 15% of the total health for up to 4 allies in range, which makes it much better at saving allies now. Piercing Blade stuns monsters with a 20% chance to stun characters for 2 seconds, and a passive of increasing boss damage by 10%. Stunned players will have their ability go on cooldown and lose mana if you can successfully interrupt it. If a boss or monster is interrupted while using an ability, they will reuse the ability as soon as possible. If you interrupt an ultimate ability, it will go on cooldown but the charge will not be exhausted. Guardian Circle increases physical defense and bash reduction while granting the additional buff for 15 seconds, plus 10% monster damage reduction, plus 50 physical defense, and plus 10% bash damage reduction. Tai Chi increases your evasion by 50 for 30 seconds and 250 for 5 seconds. It reduces a monster's skill damage reduction by 10% for 30 seconds and a player's by 5%. It also increases the party's recovery skill amount by 15% for 8 seconds. The knockdown chance versus players goes up to 30%. Blasting Charm reduces monsters' all damage reduction by 15% and a character's monster damage reduction by 15% for 15 seconds, which makes it much more useful while farming. Soaring Slash now resets Confuse and Chill for 10 seconds. On critical hit, reduces target's physical and spell defense by 10 for 60 seconds. Passive increases party skill damage reduction by 4%. Expulsion Circle increases the caster and up to 4 other party members' spell defense by twice as much for 15 seconds. Party skill damage reduction by 6% for 15 seconds, and boss damage reduction by 10% for 20 seconds. Greater Heal heals you an additional 10% max HP, and party members an additional 20% of their max HP. It also has a 60% chance of removing stun from your party. At this point now, the passives add an extra 280 power to yourself and an extra 200 power to your party, for a total buff of 480 power, just in passive bonuses. Using Moonlight Wave before Piercing Blade will increase the chance to stun a player. Using Sunbeam Sword before Tai Chi increases the chance of knockdown while making you very hard to hit for 5 seconds. Try not to overlap these combos, as it is pointless to stun your target if they can't hit you. Once you get debilitated, activate Guardian Circle to reduce the incoming bash damage. Before using a heal, try to use Tai Chi to increase the healing power. Use a Moonlight ability into Dodge into Rain of Blades for a chance to greatly lower your enemy's evasion, which opens them up for an easy bash bonus. Warriors are now much scarier, with 30% knockdown and many bonuses. That means that you'll have to be much more careful when you use your abilities. Many of their abilities also have a chance to stun now, and when they activate Berserk, Riposte, or Unbreakable Stance, you have to kite, dodge, heal, or do anything to get away from them for the next 5 to 10 seconds before they become much weaker. A bad warrior will use all of these abilities at the same time and not last very long, but if someone uses them correctly, you're in for a long and hard battle. Lancers also have an additional 20% knockdown on their abilities, but the real hazards with them are their ability to increase the cooldown timer of your abilities while in darkness with Sweeping Storm, and their absorption. Now they heal for much more and they amplify damage by 25%. When they knock you down, you suffer additional penalties to knockdown resistance, so more of their knockdowns can land. The trick is to immune the first few knockdowns with Tai Chi and heal, and kite away from them when they activate Absorption or Wind Wall. They can also freeze you or blind you, giving them the upper hand. Try not to use any bash-related abilities or heals while you have darkness on you, unless they are the ones that reset and stack chill. Sorcerers are relatively the same, they just get more burst damage with the chance to freeze and silence enemies. Be careful to stop attacking them in their ice block or you will freeze yourself. Arbalists can now stun often, blind you, and lower your movement speed. They'll make it hard for you to hit them and do a ton of bonus damage to stun targets. Try to refrain from using a healing ability for 10 seconds after Venom Mist Shell to let the healing debuff wear off. Taoists come down to who can combo their abilities in a more efficient manner, and RNG in cases of equal power and skill, due to buff ripping, debilitation, crits, and CC. Debilitations go up another 2 seconds. Bonus bash damage goes up to 80%. Numbers get bigger. I won't cover these differences, but I will cover how gameplay is changed. Ray of Light can now be used even when silenced. Moonlight Wave adds 60 accuracy and evade to the party and increases healing abilities by 15%. Sunbeam Sword has a 65% chance to break armor if the target's armor and weapon are damaged, lowering their physical and spell defense by 50 for 300 seconds. Moonlight Orb confuses targets now for 10 seconds and reduces the target's skill resistance by 15%. Rain of Blades becomes impossible to evade. It has a 40% chance to silence the enemy for 4 seconds and lowers their bash reduction by 20% for 10 seconds. Heal removes all debilitation debuffs from yourself with a 50% chance to remove them from your party. This is huge damage mitigation since bash combos require these debilitations to amplify damage. It also reduces boss damage by 10% for 30 seconds and can be used when silenced while removing silence from the entire party. Piercing Blades lowers the target's skill reduction by 15%. If it triggers a bash, It confuses and chills the target for 8 seconds, which can combo your other bash abilities. Guardian Circle adds 15% to crit damage reduction. It can be used while stunned and dispels stun from the party while increasing the stun resistance by 20% for 30 seconds. Tai Chi now has a 65% chance to break weapons for -50 physical, spell attack, accuracy, and evasion if the target has damaged weapon and armor. Blasting Charm decreases PvP reduction by 15%. It also reduces stun resistance by 10% as well as debilitation and silence resistance by 15% for 30 seconds. Soaring Slash gains an additional 50% skill damage when bashed target is confused and chilled simultaneously. Expulsion Circle removes party silence and debilitation debuffs when used and can be used while silenced. It adds 10% debilitation and silence resist for 30 seconds for the caster and 20% for the party. Greater Heal makes you and your party invincible for 3 seconds. You can use it to resurrect one dead party member with 20% health. Can be used while silenced or stunned, and delays death for 5 seconds when killed. Now that we laid out all of the bonuses to abilities from awakening them, we can see that the best full combo of damaging abilities would be Blasting Charm to amplify damage and lower debilitation resistance, Moonlight Orb to strip their buff, amplify damage, quell, and confuse them, Rain of Blades to damage their weapon, refresh confusion, silence, and amplify damage, Soaring Slash to damage armor and reset confusion, Moonlight Wave to quell and lower stun resistance, Sunbeam Sword to lower knockdown resistance and break armor, Piercing Blades to stun, confuse, chill, and amplify damage, Tai Chi to knock down, amplify damage, increase evasion, increase healing, and break weapon. Of course, the hard part is throwing in your heals, buffs, dodges, and ultimate at the best times while keeping the combo going so that every ability can bash while removing the debilitations of your enemy to prevent their bashes. The final awakening will increase bash bonus damage to 100% and debilitations will be 15 seconds long. All of the numbers for your abilities go up along with a few extra benefits. Your ult will now remove silence from you. Moonlight Orb now lowers target's crit evasion by 300 for 10 seconds. Heal also dispels stun from your party members. Guardian Circle increases your party's stun resistance by 20% for 60 seconds and gives the lowest health party member plus 30% to all damage reduction for 15 seconds. Tai Chi now lowers the enemy accuracy by 300 for 15 seconds. Expulsion Circle now gives the caster plus 50% debilitation resistance and the party plus 25% debilitation resistance for 60 seconds. The way I play the game, I spend about 70% of my time grinding experience, 25% gathering, 4% fighting bosses, and 1% in large and small scale PvP. Don't get me wrong, I would love to build my character to be as meta as possible, but to do so would put a huge cramp in my ability to grind experience at an efficient rate. I believe the optimal build for boss fighting and PvP to be entirely defensive in order to survive anything the enemy can throw at you while buffing and healing your team and lowering the damage and survivability of the enemy. Playing a pure tank will make you incredibly slow at farming monsters, and since that is what we will be doing the majority of the time, I cannot ignore stats that will help me become stronger at a faster rate. With all this in mind, I want to talk about damage modifiers. Crit and Bash have built-in damage modifiers of 50% and 50 to 100% depending on the level of the ability respectively. So if an attack or ability lands a critical strike, the base damage will increase by 50% and your crit attack damage boost will be added to the total damage modifier and compared to the target's damage reduction modifiers. You want to stack as many modifiers as possible, and you can only do this if you have a high chance to crit and bash your opponent successfully, which could grant you 2 to 5 times the damage depending on their reduction values. This is why I have focused on crit in my build and evasion as defensive measure. The crit will apply max bonus as often as possible to basic attacks and abilities, while evasion will make it harder for enemies to hit, crit, debilitate, stun, freeze, blind, bash, knockdown, and silence me all in one stat. Feel free to build your Taoist however you want, but I feel like this makes me grow at a much faster pace while making myself somewhat durable in a big fight. For the weapon, I think it's best to go with increased skill damage to help your offense in all areas of the game. While skill defense would be better for bosses in PvP, it would greatly reduce your damage output. The top is best to go with crit damage boost. I know it has diminishing returns with the crit multiplier, but so does the crit damage reduction. Evasion is the defensive stat to go with, as enemies can't crit what they can't hit, which makes your crit damage reduction and crit evasion worth less. Since pants have no way of giving me an advantage at killing monsters, I picked the PvP damage reduction. You will usually be getting attacked by more people than you will be attacking in large-scale PvP, and the reduction will be more beneficial than the extra damage in my opinion. You are not built to kill things, you are built to outlast them, and this helps you do so, and makes your healing more effective. The gloves are the same as the pants, PvP reduction all the way, unless you want your whole party to wipe more often because you were busy doing that extra 8% damage instead of keeping them alive. With the shoes, I'm going with all attack damage to help with clearing monsters, since that is what I will be doing most of the time. The necklace with crit is much better than the crit evade option, since we're going with an evasion build. The bracelet with bash reduction would only aid you in PvP, while the increase in bash damage will help you in PvP and the other 99% of the game, which makes the increased bash damage superior. The rings are like the shoes, and the all attack damage is best for helping you kill monsters. This is what I've decided to go with for my epic gear based on trying out combinations of both sets of rare gear. Remember that once you make it into legendary gear, you are granted both sets of bonuses. When rolling enchantments, I'm looking for an A or better in a primary stat with at least 1 to 2 C or B bonuses and a secondary or primary stat. You may not be comfortable rolling that many enchantments on all gear. Primary stats are crit, skill attack damage, and all attack damage. Secondary stats are all damage reduction, debilitation success, monster attack damage, and debilitation resistance. It may be valuable in the early game to roll knockdown resistance for both bosses and PvP, but once your enemies start to awaken abilities, they will have a bonus that is too high to compete with, and you will have to use your knockdown immunity, dodging, and ultimate to protect you. It is good to have multiple magic stone builds for different situations, and I made a magic stone video guide to help you if you want to check that out. I will just say that health is vastly undervalued by many Taoists. Not only do the self-heals of your 3 abilities scale with health, but there is no ability that does extra damage based upon the target's health, so it is highly exploitable. Health has the extra benefit of increasing the amount of healing from potions and regeneration, as well as ally Taoists who will heal you for more when it is needed. It is important to have at least 75% of your total mana that will be needed to cast all of your abilities. So if the total mana cost of every ability was 10,000, I would want to have at least 7,500 mana. This means that in the time it takes to cast all of my abilities, I will have gained enough from mana potions and regen to finish casting them all. This will also give me enough mana to use small combos in boss fights without going below 50%, so I can always heal when needed. Crit, All attack damage, evasion, health, and mana if needed are all great. While experience stones will help you gain more experience, if the bonus stats suck, you're better off with a yellow stone with great stats. Killing things faster also gains you more experience. I have various spirit treasure builds just like magic stones to accomplish different things. For boss raids I like to use millennial fruit leaves for additional healing along with lucky drop and drop rate. For PvP I use millennial fruit leaves with lightning bells. For farming monsters I use a mix of monster damage and bonus experience from tiger beads and Centennial Sable's Centimani stones. When it comes to your codex, I would prioritize buffs in this order: experience gain, physical attack, spell attack, crit, evasion, all attack boost, debilitation success, debilitation resist, monster damage, physical defense, spell defense, all attack reduction, and all others. When it comes to bosses in PvP, I would go with reduction first over damage. Constitution, Inner Force, Solitude Training, and Conquest are all leveled up pretty evenly, but I would focus on whichever item was needed to advance my Conquest towers. For Constitution, I would prioritize Evasion over Health, and Mana over Accuracy, since these share the hardest to obtain ingredients of flower oil and unicorn slices. Those are all the tips I have for my fellow Taoists out there in this guide. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you have any feedback or tips of your own. I try to be as accurate as possible, but I doubt it's perfect, so please adjust your standards accordingly, and have a great day.